Good morning, everyone. Today is Wednesday, September 5th, 2018, and it's just shortly after 8:30. We're going to start our meeting. Commission Secretary, will you please call the roll?
Chairman Smith.
Present.
Commissioner Chase.
Present.
Commissioner Waters.
Present.
Commissioner Bristol.
Present.
Commissioner Brinton.
Present.
Commissioner Eckert.
Present.
We have a quorum. Okay, it's nice to be back in St. Louis for our annual visit every year. First time that I've been able to come to the district office, so I want to thank Tom Blair for hosting us to this time. So we meet in Jefferson City during the legislative session, and then from June to through the end of the year, we travel around the state and listen to all the people's needs and wants and their transportation priorities. And it's always good to come to St. Louis. You guys got a lot of stuff going on here. So we're going to start our meeting this morning with a brief safety emphasis. Mark Corcoran, St. Louis Assistant District Engineer, is going to give us a safety update in case of an emergency.
Thank you all for being here. We like to take a minute when we have this many people packed in a room to make sure we have a plan in case an emergency happens. So, we don't plan to have an emergency, but if we do, if there was a fire, we'd ask the commission to go out the back door and go out the way you came in through the front. Everyone else would go out the door over here and follow out the same way you came in unless the fire happened to be in the lobby. If it was in the lobby, we would move the table and we would exit the building in the other direction, and we would get as far away from the building as possible. Now, I've checked the weather this morning, and there's not supposed to be any tornadoes. There could be a light chance of rain, but if there was a tornado, we would just get into the hallway. So in the hallway, you'd be as safe as you could be in this building. In case of a medical emergency, I've talked to Mick, the fire chief, that he told me he would take care of any CPR needs. We have a retired nurse that works for MoDOT, Karen Yeomans, who would make sure and call 911. And there is one AED in the building that's in the stairwell across from the elevator. I'd take care of getting that. So just make sure you get out of my way if that's needed, and I'll get over there. So that concludes the safety minute this morning. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. I want Karen not to call in. I want her to be taking care of me if it's me. So get somebody else to call. Next thing, I'd like to recognize some special guests. We're lucky to have Mayor Carrie Turgeon from Jefferson City. Mayor, good to see you. Thank you for coming. And we have Roger Fisher, Callaway City Commission. County Commission, I'm sorry. Thank you, Roger. Nice. And we have Jennifer Hoskins from Senator Roy Blunt's office. Jennifer, thank you for being here. Next, I need to review a few items. I want to remind everyone that we have a public comment period, and we are pleased to offer this to every Missourian that wants to come before the commission to address an issue or concern. Any of you that would like to address the commission, please sign up before 9 a.m. at the table in the back. Right, Pam? Okay. And a reminder, you'll have 5 minutes for public comment or 10 minutes per subject. So we're always interested in hearing what people have to say. So next, I want to review our abstention process. There are commissioners that, because of land ownership or business interests, or the lawyers may represent clients that may either have some relationship to a matter coming before the commission and may have a potential or actual conflict of interest to be considered or voted upon. The commission member will indicate if he or she chooses to abstain from voting or to recuse himself from participating in discussion of an item agenda. If an item agenda is divisible by contract, call, project, or like, a commissioner may specify that particular matter and then still vote on the remainder of the agenda items. This information is provided to the Commission Secretary by letter in advance to today's meeting. So the Commission Secretary will duly indicate the abstention or recusal according in the minutes of the meeting. Madam Secretary, have the necessary papers or letters been prepared? They have. Okay, the next first item on the agenda is consideration of the minutes of the regular meeting on June 6, 2018, and a special meeting on June 26, 2018. Has everybody had a chance to review those minutes?
I move we approve the minutes. Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Madam Secretary, will you please call the roll?
Chairman Smith.
Aye.
Commissioner
Aye.
Commissioner Briscoe.
Aye.
Commissioner Waters.
Aye.
Commissioner Brinkman. Commissioner Evans.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. The minutes are approved. The next business item is considerations of items on the consent agenda. Does anyone need to remove any item for discussion later or to abstain from any item? If not, I would entertain a motion.
So moved. Second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Okay. I'm sorry. Oh, that's right, I'm sorry. Yeah, we do have a delegation here today from Jefferson City, and we have approved their port application. So if you all that worked on that would please stand up, we'd like to recognize everyone. There you go. Thank you. And do you want a picture later? Okay. Okay, thank you, guys. Are you excited? Okay, I just want to make sure. Okay, next, our committee and board reports. First, we have the audit, and that's Commissioners Waters, Brinkman, and Ecker. Do you have a report?
No, I don't.
You don't?
But our next meeting will be in November, and we'll have lots to report then when the auditors give us their report.
No, we won't have much to report then.
We'll have lots of good news, Patrick.
So will you have nothing then?
That's my report.
Okay. Okay. The next item is the legislative, which I co-chair with Commissioner Pace, and Commissioner Pace is going to give the report today. Commissioner?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Contrary to the audit report, I have a lengthy report, so bear with me. On behalf of the Commission's Legislative Committee, I would like to present MoDOT's legislative priorities for the 2019 session for the Missouri General Assembly. These legislative proposals align with the Department's three core values of safety, service, and stability, and with Governor Parsons' two top initiatives of infrastructure and workforce development. The first proposal is a safety initiative for highway workers who are struck and killed by a motor vehicle in a work zone. Sadly, in 2016, MoDOT's Lyndon Ebker, a maintenance worker, was killed while his crew was cleaning a bridge in rural Missouri. Last legislative session, former Representative Justin Offerman filed a proposal that would authorize the Department of Revenue to automatically revoke a driver's license upon notice that the individual was involved in a motor vehicle crash where his or her vehicle struck a highway worker. A driver's license will be reinstated upon taking and passing both the written and the driving portion of the driver's exam. This proposed change in law will ensure that motorists demonstrate competency to operate a motor vehicle and improve workplace safety for all highway workers. Another safety proposal addresses the dangerous behavior of distracted driving. Missouri's current law, passed in 2009, prohibits drivers 21 years of age and under from using a handheld electronic communication device for texting while driving. The proposed legislation would prohibit all drivers from using a handheld electronic communication device for texting and talking while driving. 16 states and the District of Columbia currently prohibit all drivers from using a handheld cell phone. Last year, MoDOT worked with a coalition of external partners to pursue the passage of this legislation. The department plans to continue working with those groups and a growing number of elected officials to pursue the passage of this legislation. In the meantime, the department continues to promote its Buckle Up, Phone Down initiative. This program was designed by MoDOT to educate the driving public on the importance of accepting personal responsibility for changing their driving behavior by buckling up and putting their phones down when driving a motor vehicle. The campaign encourages individuals and businesses to take the Buckle Up, Phone Down challenge. The third legislative proposal surrounds MoDOT's value of sustainability. This proposal pertains to establishing a registration fee based on a motor vehicle mile per gallon rating. Stemming from the recommendation outlined in the 2017 report, generated by the 21st Century Missouri Transportation System Task Force. The committee believes the state of Missouri should recognize and prepare for long-term sustainability and diversification of transportation revenue streams. One approach would be to address the state's antiquated 1911, by the way, motor vehicle registration system that is based on taxable horsepower and replace it with a miles per gallon equitable model. This change in law would establish a registration fee based on a motor vehicle's mile per gallon rating and would also establish a base rate for electric vehicles and any vehicles that do not operate on motor fuel. A mile per gallon model would work towards sustaining transportation revenues in response to increased fuel efficiencies and alternatives to the use of motor fuels for transportation. As presented, these three proposals are MoDOT's priorities for the 2019 legislative session. Again, these proposals encourage MoDOT's values as well as support the governor's infrastructure and workforce development initiatives. The department is seeking the commission's consensus on these initiatives, and with the understanding these proposals will be shared with Governor Parson to be considered as part of his legislative agenda for 2019. So a quite aggressive agenda. And that concludes my report. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Vice Chair. Any questions, comments? Thank you. Next is the Missouri Transportation Finance Corporation Board. I serve as president, and Commissioner Waters and Ecker serve, and we have no report this month. The next meeting is planned in October, correct, Brenda? So we'll have a report next month for you. And the next is the MoDOT and Patrol Retirement System Board, Empress. I serve on the board along with Commissioners Pace and Briscoe. And Commissioner Briscoe, do you have a report today?
I can say that we really don't have a report because we didn't have a meeting in August. Our next meeting will be September 27th, and we'll have a report after that.
Okay. Thank you. So that concludes our committee and board reports. The next item on the agenda is the MoDOT Director's Report. Patrick?
I hope those are awards.
They are. We just, I just wanted to let the commission know and everyone know that we brought some hardware home. It's not an unusual thing for MoDOT, but it's always worth celebrating. And just recently, MoDOT won 2 regional America's Transportation Awards, and it was at the regional MASTO meeting. In the 11-year history of this award program, MoDOT has won at least once, 10 times, and we've got a string now of 7 years in a row. This is a pretty competitive, you'd be amazed at the projects going on throughout the country and throughout our region, and MoDOT competes very well with innovation and work being done. The first award was for the Ozark County North Fork River Bridge replacements in Southeast District, and it tied for first place in the Operations Excellent Small Project category. And these were the 2 bridges that we went down and saw a couple months ago that were washed away by last year's flooding. Pete Berry was our project manager, and Mark Shelton, our district engineer, led the team down there. As you saw, a pretty amazing and rapid replacement that reconnected those communities during a time of need. I think the communities were amazed at how quickly they were replaced as well. The second item, which is the Route 65, the rebuild project in Springfield, it won the Quality of Life Community Development Small Project category, and is now actually, this one's been forwarded along, and it's competing for the top 2 national awards that'll be determined later this month in Atlanta, Georgia. So on a national stage, the grand prize is selected by a panel of experts, and the People's Choice Award is chosen by the public through online voting. So that's going to be held on the 23rd of this month. And so what we wanted to show is that the America's Transportation Awards, and it looks like, see, I'm holding the clicker up here, but I'm doing nothing. So I just wanted to, so thank you. Very well masked. But I'm going to mock vote here to encourage everyone to do so. So you can vote every 24 hours. I've already voted 3 times. I think Ed's been in there every day. I think I missed 1 day. So vote early, vote often. It's encouraged, but this website gives you the ability to make that vote. You click on Vote Now, scroll down to the correct project, as I am deftly doing here. We're doing it. We're confirming the vote. So that was just 1 vote, but it can be done from individual computers. So if you've got one at work, you've got one at home, you've got your kid's computer, go ahead and do that. We're not a densely populated state, so we have to vote early and often. But it's really, I don't want to make light of this. MoDOT is well regarded, well respected in this field, and 7 years running across a spectrum of projects. We continue to be recognized, and not only that, but we continue to put forward the applications. There's a fair amount of work that's involved in that, and I think it's important to recognize the skill and capability of not only our teams in the construct of this, but our private sector partners who get out there and get these jobs done for us and rapidly in the case of the river bridge replacements. It's really been interesting for me to see when we go to these regional and national events how well regarded MoDOT is and how much we collaborate and participate and learn from the other award winners. So that's one of our core issues when we go to these events is we bring back good ideas wherever we can find them and help deploy those. And a lot of that culture of innovation is really the responsibility and brainchild and sustained effort by Ed Hassinger, our chief engineer. Really challenges our teams to step forward, step out of the box, and bring innovative solutions at good prices for the citizens. So really pleased by this, and we're hoping to make some noise at the national level later this month. Also wanted to spend a couple minutes to recognize the work that the MoDOT team did here in this region recently with the PGA Tour. Last month the PGA Championships was held at Bellerive Country Club here in St. Louis, and it was a huge success. A great moment for St. Louis, and MoDOT was a big part of that effort. It was a region-wide effort that was going on, and that's something that we want to recognize. Southwest St. Louis County area engineer Karen Yeomans led a team that was involved in the planning process for a year leading up to the event. This is one of those other duties as assigned, right? And it took on a life of its own throughout. And assisting her were Jeff Baird, Ryan Rands, and Ben Gedris. If you could stand and be recognized.
Jason Bell.
Oh, Jason Bell, sorry. Yep. Great. They worked with the staff from the PGA, the Country Club, the Highway Patrol, FBI, U.S. Postal Inspectors, police departments from St. Louis County, Town and Country, Creve Coeur, and Chesterfield. St. Louis County Transportation, St. Louis County Office of Emergency Management, the National Weather Service, and local EMS. Hosting an event is a little different than it used to be 20 years ago, 10 years ago. The needs, the security needs, and the transportation needs in and out were really important. They developed plans to address parking and traffic impacts created by the tournament, which included road closures in the vicinity of the golf course and traffic control plans near the major parking venues. Jason Bell, Kathy Gettermeyer, and Nick Lertz led our maintenance forces, who pre-staged traffic control devices prior to the event, came in early each morning to set up the road closures, then worked in the evening to reopen the roads. Some of the maintenance staff were Larry Johnson, Chaz Baker, Steve Ludens, Roy Mize, Kevin Schlereth, Mike Corley, Mario Lucas, Larry Wagner, and Steve Hoffman. We had a whole team working on this. During the week of the tournament, Karen, Jeff, and Ryan were based in the command center to monitor traffic impacts and to adjust the signal timing as needed. Karen also used the week as a training exercise for 6 of our up-and-coming engineers who each job shadowed for a day to see how a planned event is executed and how incident command works. They all did a great job, and we wanted to play an excerpt from a radio interview with the PGA's tournament director that aired on KMOX radio in St. Louis. And again, I'm pretending to do something here with the clicker. So
The other thing too that people don't really think about when they talk about the orchestration of an event like this, let's just talk about transportation. The number of different bus vendors from out of town that you had to bring in to accommodate all of your needs. I was talking to one of the shuttle bus drivers the other day who was here from New Orleans, Louisiana. A couple of days earlier, the media bus folks came from Tallahassee, Florida, and they work every one of your events and look forward to it each and every year. The fans don't think about that when they think about the PGA's coming to Belle Rive.
As far as the PGA Championship is concerned, I think I'm most proud of the transportation and traffic plan that has been put in place and working extremely well. Buses have been rolling.
Right.
That's a feat. That's a major move for St. Louisans. We're talking 350 buses from 12 different lots from as far as Fenton to St. Charles to Maryland Heights, Creve Coeur, Ladue. It's just amazing to coordinate it all. But St. Louis County, State of Missouri, MoDOT. MoDOT's been an incredible partner. The state troopers, of course, the traffic engineers with MoDOT. You know, just to lock down the 2 miles around this area and the residents and the members. I mean, the members are just. They should be so proud of what they've done for the city. It's a major undertaking. They've pretty much lost their golf course. This is an 18-hole facility since June, if not before. They'll be a little loud for another couple months. Huge sacrifice.
And you know, you mentioned the traffic routing. I can tell you from Shinnecock, it's not, and actually go back to Olympia Fields in Chicago, it's not automatic that all these agencies want to work together. It's not automatic that every one of these police forces says, yeah, we're going to shut down or we're going to one-way or we're going to do those kinds of things. That's not a given in every community.
10-4 on that one. It's a big 10-4. But here it's been, if I could take this group of leaders with St. Louis County and the state and Town and Country and Creve Coeur and move them around the country, I would. One, because they just work within a unified command approach. 2, they have great pride in St. Louis. And 3, they're just good folk.
yeah, that really sums it up. You know, it seemed like an overnight success, but it was a year's worth of work in the making. And that coordination, the coordination with local law enforcement and community leaders throughout, is really what it's all about. That was a great event for this region. It's all about the showcasing the region and making it even with the security concerns, making it a success and convenient for the visitors. I think everyone was amazed. The PGA folks said it well. So thank you so much, Karen and your team for doing that. I wanted to discuss just briefly an item that we've been working on. You know, another thing is we talk about planning. You know, when it's 90 degrees out, MoDOT's trying to think about how we're going to deal with it when it's not 90 degrees out. You know, when the weather hits in the winter season, we are faced with, and this is a multi-year, actually almost a multi-decade issue for the department. It's one we've talked about. But we're faced with a potential shortfall of 900 professional operators heading into this winter season. 900. MoDOT maintenance operated last year nearly 400 employees below full capacity to handle a 2-shift winter event, requiring, as we have for years, on approximately 500 safety-sensitive, non-maintenance operators. So we're essentially voluntelling 500 people in the organization that did not come in to plow snow that they need to. We've been doing that for a number of years. We've been doing it because we're having trouble with turnover. We've been doing it because we have not been able, through our compensation rates, to attract and retain the professional operators that we have throughout our maintenance department at the levels we need to respond in a manner that the public expects. For the last 2 seasons, really, Mother Nature has been on our side with lower than average winter conditions. We can't rely on chance to address this critical shortage of professional operators. If we don't change this equation, our ability to provide service at levels expected by the traveling public will suffer, as will safety. We cannot let that happen. During emergency operations, when the public needs MoDOT the most, failure is not an option. Last week, I announced that beginning on September 1, and with the Commission's guidance here, we'll be providing an emergency operations stabilization and market adjustment. It's an hourly adjustment that we're going to be doing, depending on the area of operation, to all full-time, seasonal, and emergency equipment operators handling winter activities. We simply have to deal with this. We have turnover in St. Louis and Kansas City particularly that approached 20% in the past year. And having skilled, trained professionals out there when the public needs us is absolutely critical. We're taking on these steps now in response to our current situation heading into winter operations. We're going to evaluate these measures throughout and at the end of the season to determine the effectiveness. Obviously we want a return on investment here, but I'm optimistic that these steps will help us recruit and retain a qualified workforce and help ease the burden for those that are sacrificing, and their families that are sacrificing to be out there in harm's way when the public needs us. I just wanted to alert you to that and discuss that. It's something we'll be discussing through the budget process going forward, and it's just a critical action we felt we needed to take. Wanted to give an update also on, in addition, the MASTO annual meeting. It was held last week in Michigan. It marked the end of my year as president, which was really, truly an honor. You know, and it's interesting, the scheduling. I think I was on the ground in Michigan for 17 or 18 hours. So it was, I abdicated some of my responsibilities there, but we also have a lot of critical things going on here, so we try to balance that out. We had a good team there participating. During the past year, we really, one of the issues in working through these associations and working collaboratively across with other states, we always want to make sure that we keep an eye on the ball and we advance it, not just hold it. I don't look at these as opportunities just to go to meetings. It's to get things done. So during the past year, we engaged in a really robust conversations, which helped the national administration understand our unique needs as they create the framework for a much-needed transportation infrastructure plan. And I was able to testify before Congress in doing so as the MASTO president. MASTO worked to align our state's goals, and we drafted a white paper outlining specific policy recommendations that we'd like to see addressed. The health of our rural communities in the country is linked to the overall prosperity and continued success of our nation's economy and its ability to compete globally. During the tenure this past year, I urged our organization to support movement at the federal level that could provide a framework for states to work within to advance the use of automated vehicle technologies. I still believe in adopting a form of smart cities concept along our borders for modeling and planning purposes to address capacity and congestion issues. We must address this issue because we can't build our way out of congestion. Last year, MASTO held a summit to discuss and identify needs and priorities regarding the movements of freight. With the national freight volume expected to grow more than 40% over the next 30 years, we have to continue past President Blankenhorn's efforts to harmonize freight movement between our states. They're doing a great job of that. It's been a real pleasure to be a part of that organization. We've worked hard to do it. We actually have and the team at MoDOT really worked hard on this. Our communications and government relations team put together an annual report for MASTO, and it's really instructive to see what other states in the region are doing and how we're working together to really represent the heartland of America in the national transportation issues. Also, it's pretty exciting time within state. we're working hard with the governor's cabinet. With the leadership of Governor Parson, his cabinet has a number of initiatives underway to address his priorities of building Missouri's workforce and improving the state's infrastructure. And that extends beyond just roads and bridges and other transportation, but water and sewer systems, schools, and broadband. Both the governor and Lieutenant Governor Kehoe have really taken the lead in advocating for Proposition D, which is hugely appreciated, and it's a really critical factor for the state to have the entire all of local support through the General Assembly and what they did this past year, and then having the Lieutenant Governor and Governor supporting this effort. We're really feeling optimistic going in, but we can't rest on those laurels. There's a lot of work to do between now and the November election. We're providing, as MoDOT does, we're providing information into that discussion. We're not running a campaign overtly. We're participating in open forums and sessions to describe what the needs are. We're also working pretty hard on a regular basis to take full advantage of the federal program to pull all federal funds in. And this past week, we just received word. We had applied, but we received $83 million in August redistribution. So when other states don't use their full allocation, there's an application process to go through. You have to have projects in a plan, and you have to be able to execute, to obligate those federal funds in a very rapid period of time. It's hard work. Our finance team, led by Brenda Morris and Eric Schrader in the design and program team, really came together in the last 60 days and put together a very aggressive plan. That is a large share of federal resources coming to Missouri, and we just wanted you to be aware of that. Also in October, we're going to be holding planning meetings, which will be held within each of our 7 districts with the metropolitan planning organizations and regional planning commissions for a general discussion on how any additional transportation funding resulting from Proposition D could best be used in each region. We expect these to be robust conversations about road and bridge priorities and how we can all work together to develop a plan of action for the future of transportation in Missouri. It'll also serve as an early kickoff for future statewide transportation improvement program funding. So we've got a lot going on, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. We appreciate your support and the direction that you're providing us. I think we're kicking on all cylinders right now, and we've got a lot of work to do this fall. So that is my report.
Thank you, Patrick. Any discussion regarding Patrick's report? Thank you, Patrick. Lots of stuff going on, lots of good things, so. Okay, our next item is a public presentation, and Tom Blair, St. Louis District Engineer, would you come up?
Good morning, Chairman and Commission. So it's my honor to introduce Otis Williams. He is the Executive Director of the St. Louis Development Corporation. Many of you may remember our tour yesterday. We drove through some of the projects, including the NGA site that Otis is going to talk about. So without further ado, Otis, if you'll come up. I have a few handouts that Otis gave, so I'll pass those out.
Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. I'll get started while Tom passes that out. But to the chair and to members of the commission, thank you very much for inviting me. Always enjoy talking about progress that's being made in the city and region. Today, I'm going to speak to what we're doing as it relates to the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency and the support that MoDOT has provided for us. But just to give you this is a huge, huge project. So can I have the next slide, please? Okay, so as you can see, there are 3 lines here. The city is responsible for a major portion of this, and that's the portion that we receive the assistance from MoDOT on. So the city had the responsibility to prepare the site. This is a 97-acre site that is located at Jefferson and Cass Avenue in the city of St. Louis. That second line is, by the end of this year, we intend to turn this over to the federal government. And that is the federal team that includes the Army Corps of Engineers, the Air Force, the Department of Defense, the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency. They will build this facility. It is a $1.75 billion project, and this is a huge undertaking here in the city. The third piece there you see is an action plan, which is essentially something we call Project Connect. And Project Connect is an overlay over the two areas there, the city sites preparation and also the federal construction. But we're trying to align all of the actions for people, the plans, and the projects that are underway and have been planned previously in that area. So Project Connect has a life of its own, and it will last throughout the actual construction and in the actual turnover. Next slide, please. These little bubbles just show you that there's a lot of activity going on here. So the NGA site is that little gray dot that you see up there in North St. Louis, and around it is a lot of activity. And one of the reasons that we were able to retain this function here in the city is because of the urban environment. As the director indicates, you know, he's prepared to try and retain and attract the talent of the future. And what we're looking at now is that most young folks like the urban environment, and they also are attracted to the transportation assets that are available as well, both from just the bicycle, in this case, our transit system, but also the highway system that is connected, and as well as I call it the educational assets that are in the region. So we are moving the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency from a little area that's just across from Anheuser-Busch headquarters, about 4 miles north to this area that is the new NGA. But in order to do that, we had to compete. And so let's go to the next slide, please. So one of the reasons why we knew that we needed to compete, you can see that there are some really key stats here. One, this is a $1.75 billion facility that the 3,150 employees that are employed there provide to the city on an annual basis $3 million in earnings tax, but to the state of Missouri a little over $8 million annually. And so, which is why both the city and state were all in to try and retain this agency. As you know, we had a very feverish competition between Illinois to try and retain this agency. So one of the things that the site, a couple of stats about the site, it's 97 acres, there were 110 owners on this site, 551 parcels. 74% of the land, obviously, however, was vacant, so didn't impact a whole lot of people, but the 110 that we did, I know a few of them are not happy about it, but this is for the better good, if you will, of the city and the state. And there were 137 structures. But all in all, if you talk to almost every one of these property owners, they're happy now because we were very generous in our settlements with them, and we're able to provide a lot of new product for them to, better product for them to live in. Next slide, please. As you note here, we got started on this back in 2012, but the announcement was actually in 2014 when the NGA formally announced that they were looking for a place. They did not make a decision until June of 2016, which is when we started to try and prepare this site and realize the connection that we needed to have there. This timeline will take you all the way out to 2025, which is when this facility will open. In order to garner this, we had to make a few promises. We made 3 promises to the NGA and to the federal government. That first promise essentially was that we would provide one owner, that the site would be environmentally clean, the buildings would be demolished, the streets and alleys vacated, and the utilities relocated. If you remember, we had 551 parcels, so we had to really real challenge there. So today, this site looks like this. Actually, it's a little better because we have taken down that last building you see there. That was Faultless Laundry. Faultless has since moved about a month ago, and so we've taken that facility down. So all 137 structures are down. Next slide, please. This is where MoDOT, the Commission, Federal Highway, East-West Gateway, all of our partners in transportation arena all came to the fore to try and assist us. This was to improve the infrastructure and improving that infrastructure. We were trying to make great improvements on the interchange at Jefferson and I-44. But we're also making improvements on Jefferson Avenue from Market all the way to Natural Bridge and Cass Avenue. But the most significant support that we received from the Commission is on the interchange, and I'll speak a little more about that next. If you can see this interchange, currently, if you're familiar with it, it is now not a full interchange. We want to make it a full interchange such that people can exit coming from Illinois, but also use a ramp to go to Illinois. And also, this particular interchange, we went through the access justification report, and as a result of that, this is the facility that has been will be designed. So you can see the purple is essentially in the right-of-way, the state's right-of-way, federal right-of-way, and the blue is significant of all of the work that the city will be doing. Passed out to you a sheet there that sort of provides for you the cost estimates to actually get this done. We naively went into this thinking that we were going to get this done for $10 million. And a few months and a lot of help later, we realized that it was actually $50 million. And so that shows you the actual breakdown of the contributors to this, to the funding of it. It is fully funded and will actually get fully designed. Next, please. A companion to this is the continuation of Jefferson Avenue from Market Street, and also a parallel path, which is 20th Street, which is a bicycle facility. We are focused on trying to provide greater access to the NGA site. We will later also work on getting the access along Cass Avenue, as we are looking at the North-South Metro as well, to try and ensure that as the Metro leaves downtown, it will go up 14th and then make a left, the preferred route at this point, make a left on Cass Avenue, go past the NGA site, and make a right on Jefferson. So it's an integral transportation plan, if you will, require a lot of transportation assets in order to get it done. This is a focus of a build grant that we have currently submitted, and anybody who is talking to anybody that can support us on this would be great. We have a great match for this, so it's a $40 million build grant. We are in fact matching it with about 50-50 from local assets. Next slide. Okay, so our third promise is essentially to eliminate blight. And if you took your tour around the area, you can see that there's a great need. This is an opportunity for us. This is an opportunity to transform that community. And so we are looking at all of the retail, commercial, residential that can potentially happen around that site, and we're focused on that. So in order to get that done, we are looking at Project Connect. To do that, as I mentioned, this is all of the people, the plans that we will be looking at. The next slide, please. We do that through aligning all of the community goals, and we have been meeting with the folks in that community on a repetitive basis. Since the announcement, we've probably had about 15 to 20 public meetings, making sure that we understand and listen to the various voices in the community. We've completed market studies, stormwater studies, traffic, transit, and bikes, looking at financial models. And so we know a lot about this area, and we intend to take advantage of that. So just to give you a little bit of a highlight of what has happened real quick, 137 demolitions. We actually moved the house that in that top right there. You can see a historic home being moved down. It moved about 800 feet from an inner street to the main street on St. Louis Avenue. And all the demolition of all of those historic structures that were left on that site. So the next slide, please. So all total on the remediation, we had to remediate the site. There were 783,000 tons of material removed from the site. We removed 20 underground storage tanks. We thought we had 16. We ended up with 20. And we have remediated, this slide shows 93, but we have remediated all 97 acres. The underground storage tanks that were there, let's go to the next slide, please. Next slide. Go to utilities. We've removed over 22,000 linear feet of gas lines, over 19,000 linear feet of sewer lines, 46,000 linear feet of water lines, and almost 39,000 linear feet of curb. So a lot of work has gone on there, and if I can go to the very end slide there, this is an opportunity for you to ask me any questions about it. This has been a labor of love. A lot of folk have been helpful to us, and we appreciate all of it. Specifically, want to thank Tom, Greg Horn, Ed, Patrick. As we work through this, this has been a great effort. Oh, did I say Michelle? Michelle.
Yeah. I'll just say it now rather than save it for later. As we drove through the area yesterday, without exception, all of us were commenting about what a great opportunity it would be to renovate or demolish some of the old buildings down there. I mean, it's begging to be renovated and built. And we really commend you for this NGA project. It's what a aggressive yet outstanding project this really is.
Thank you very much. This has been, as I say, a real team effort thus far to get where we are and the plans that we have. We've expended almost $100 million to get this done.
Great job.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments? Director McKenna, you have any comments?
Well, please.
Go ahead.
As a kid that grew up on 39th Street, I'm glad to see this is happening. I live here, but I don't think most St. Louisans know what's going on here yet. Is there a better way to get this out into the community? I mean, this is nothing short of impressive. And what you're doing is spectacular up there.
Well, thank you. We actually hired a new communications director just a few weeks ago to try and convey a lot of the good things that are happening. So most often we are victims of our own press. And but there are a lot of good things going on. In addition to just the NGA, a lot of other great projects that are happening as well.
Great presentation.
Thank you.
Yeah, the work that had to be done in a competitive environment over the last couple of years is just extraordinary. And just like what we talked about with the PGA, it's public, it's private, it's government, it's quasi-government agencies, the support and the continued effort. This still needs a lot to push it over the finish line. It's going to take some sustained effort and some, obviously financial resources to do so. Otis and his team have been great to work with, and we appreciate what you've been doing.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you, Otis. Okay, our next item is non-action item. Ed Hassinger.
Does it work?
Engineer.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman,
Good
Commissioners. I wanted to talk to you a little bit today about planning. And, you know, we bring a lot of stuff to you over the years, and sometimes it just gets kind of all muddled up. And when people start saying those words and some of those things like EIS and EA and PEL, and it kind of turns into kind of the Charlie Brown thing, right? It goes wah, 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 right? But I think this is a great opportunity while we're here in St. Louis to kind of talk about some of those things that we start with and how that turns into the actual construction on the ground. And we have a pretty good example of that. So let me start with a few months ago, you all approved our long-range plan. And this is really taking a look at what we're doing 30 years out. And of course, everybody says, well, how can you predict what happens 30 years from now? Well, the answer is you probably can't. But we try to take a swing at that, and we try to go back every 3 to 5 years and try to reconfirm if we're on the right track. So when we ask Missourians through a lot of public input, a lot of data analysis, a lot of the things that we do, what's important to you, these things that you see on the screen are the things that consistently over the last 5 or 10 years have been those priority things. One thing that I think is important to note is this year when we did it, that last bullet, reliability and congestion relief, moved into the mix. And more about reliability, I think, is the important word there, because people depend on this system to work the same way all the time. So as we've been talking about that, one of the things that several years ago that we embarked on, and really through a lot of the priority that was placed by the federal government on freight and how important that is of driving the economy not only of Missouri but of the nation, and asked everybody to start looking at their freight plans. And we didn't have a freight plan. So we developed a freight plan several years ago and really look at the priorities that are in there. We talk about maintenance of the system, safety, economy, connectivity, and mobility. Think about how that ties into the long-range plan. So I'm going to try to thread the needle through to see how these things fit together. Long-range plan, 30-year view. We're looking at our freight plan across Missouri and how that fits into the region and trying to put in some priorities there, okay? So this is the slide, we call it the heartbeat slide, right? This shows the freight network across the country, and you think, well, why or reliability, why do we have a freight plan? All you have to do is look at this map and see why is this important to Missouri. We sit right in the middle of that entire red area where all those things tie together. So we're thinking about what we're doing, how does that fit in not only in the state of Missouri but nationally. And then where we're really going to try to go, and I'm going to introduce Wesley Stephen here to take this the rest of the way, but then we have to produce these and do projects that actually fit in to get the priorities that we've talked about in these long-range plans. So Wesley is our planning manager in St. Louis. He's one of the most technically competent planners that I know, as an expert in that arena, but also a leader at MoDOT. And so not only does he work with East-West Gateway on trying to keep the planning machine running here in St. Louis, he also is responsible for making sure that we deliver the local program here, which is about any one time $250 million of projects that our locals are producing. So let me introduce to you Wesley Stephen, and he's going to take this story the rest of the way.
That's right. Good morning.
Good morning.
And thank you for the opportunity to present very briefly on our planning process, how we move from ideas, from studies, all the way to reality. And I must say that it is a consistent process across the 7 districts. And I say that confidently, knowing that our planning managers in the other 6 districts follow a process consistently to deliver from ideas to projects. Obviously, there's a regional context, and we are a very large region, and we may take a slightly different approach to things at times, but I think overall, MoDOT has a very good planning process and the way we prioritize projects. Just to pick up on where Ed left off, so in 2013, the region initiated a first ever St. Louis regional freight study. It was a partnership to fund this study between MoDOT, IDOT, and East West Gateway, the Council of Governments here. That study showed that in 2010, through truck freight traffic on I-44, for example, carried some 75 million tons of freight across the state. And these are high-valued products, so electronics, medical equipment, durable medical equipment, so 75 million tons. On I-44 and I-70, outbound from St. Louis, between 2.5 million and 5 million tons of freight traveled through this region. So it's very important then that we do proper planning in our region to ensure that the safety and reliability of our system is maintained, not just for today, but well into the future. Here, for example, are what we're experiencing today. These are the choke points on our system in this region. To the east, on 270, we have the bridge going across the Missouri River. We call it the Chain of Rocks Bridge. A congested bridge. IDOT now has plans to replace that bridge in 2023, 2024 timeframe. The Lindbergh, US 67 270 interchange, a major choke point for us. Poplar Street Bridge near downtown. The southern tier of 270 south of I-64. Certainly 70 and 270 interchange, if not the busiest, but certainly one of the busiest interchanges in the state of Missouri. So these are real challenges that we need to address from a planning perspective. Here is, this is typical. This is I-70 heading towards the Chain of Rocks Bridge, 12 miles away from the Chain of Rocks Bridge. This is typical. And this is exclusive of when we do have incidents, which makes situations even worse. And so, again, we're challenged to address our congestion. I mentioned the 2013 freight study and the partnership that we had with IDOT and East West Gateway. And I just want to show very quickly a video. So one of the recommendations of that study was the creation of a regional freightway encompassing both Illinois and Missouri. That was done in 2014. Executive director was hired. And just want to share very briefly her perspective on freight movement in our region.
Our primary goal is to provide support for the St. Louis region in terms of maximizing infrastructure dollars and then also raising our profile and gaining national and global recognition as a premier freight hub.
The Freightway is how we do business. Being able to have the access to multimodal freight system like we do here in St. Louis is a tremendous benefit and a value not only to our business but to our customers.
We can get our shipments to our customer's location via the interstate system inside of a day. The central location is a competitive advantage for us.
Working with industry leaders, when we're telling about Ag Coast of America, they know we've got this great freight asset strategically located in the heart of the United States, strategically located on the Mississippi River. It's actually fast, it's smart, it's exciting.
A brief snippet of a vision being shared for the region for addressing freight. I'm reminded of one Daniel Burnham, who at the turn of the previous century, he was a master builder of the Chicago plan for San Francisco and so forth. He says we ought to make no little plans. Make no little plans because they have no magic that stir men's blood. And they're likely not to be realized. Instead, he says, make big plans. We ought to aim high in hope and in our work, so that after we've all left the scene, after we've all left, the plans will be realized. They become living things. And on the transportation side, that is certainly true. We think 20, 30 years ahead, beyond our generation, certainly, and we want our system to be well-functioning for the future. So we ought to make no small plans, little plans. So our approach here in St. Louis District in conducting studies is first vision setting, the whole notion that you ought to have a vision. We certainly have that in our personal lives, but have it in the transportation sector as well. We here develop and cultivate partnerships to conduct our studies. Partners come alongside, whether it's East-West Gateway or others, to fund our major studies. And as part of conducting those studies, we conduct them through a consortium. It's called the Transportation Corridor Improvement Group that was established by East-West Gateway some 20 years ago. It is a partnership of MoDOT staff, East-West Gateway staff, bi-state or metro staff, bringing planning expertise, engineering expertise, environmental science expertise, and certainly public involvement to carrying out these major studies in our region. And we've been very successful in doing so, and we're grateful for the partnerships that we've developed. So vision setting, developing, cultivating relationships, and then engaging the communities, the public, in our planning process. There's absolutely nothing worse than planning in isolation. You really set yourself up for disaster. So from start to finish in our studies, we engage the citizens. And we do use an array of tools in doing. Certainly the internet. We use in our district for the first time in MoDOT a tool called MetroQuest, an online interactive tool in which we harvested hundreds, if not thousands, of pieces of information that we use in our I-70 study. And our efforts then result or find their way into this document. This is the Regional Transportation Plan. It's currently being updated to the year 2045. It is itself a vision document, but it's also a regional portfolio of projects. So as we move through our studies and our recommendations, they must first find their way into this document if, in fact, our projects are to be funded through federal sources. This is the first step. So we make every effort to aggressively, upon completing our studies, or even before we do, for air quality and other purposes, make sure that they're included in this investment portfolio. This portfolio stretches over some 30 years, and it estimates what all sources of funding that will come into the region, federal, state, local, over that 30-year period. I would argue that even though we do excellent analysis, that public involvement, if not more so important, is just as important as the technical work we do. We must engage the communities. And part of our approach to our studies are what I call robust public involvement programs or components of our study process. And I mentioned MetroQuest. We do one-on-one. We go where people are. We talk to them. We go in church basements when we have to. But we must, from the very beginning, onset of a study to its conclusion, engage them. Now, they may not always agree, and we are the technical experts, and we will remind them of that at times, but we do listen. It is important that we listen to develop sound plans. And after all, folks in the communities know best about their use and function of the transportation system. This is just a regional map. It shows in red the corridor that we're wrapping up our study on, and in green the 270, which we completed. And here is how they connect. There are other roadways here, arterials, but I would also suggest that we can't just do our studies in isolation just looking at our highway system. It is an integrated transportation system that tries to maximize the ports that are in our area. We have 6 Class 1 railroads, third largest rail hub, as you know, in the country. And then, if I may dare say, we have to consider the uses of non-motorized users, people who walk, people who don't drive cars. For example, we found out on the 270 study, which is the northern tier of St. Louis, upwards of 20% of the residents don't have a personal vehicle. They rely on public transportation, or they walk. And they need to get across the interstates safely. We have no bridges, no sidewalks for them along that corridor. And they certainly need to get along the outer roads of that system, some of which they really are walking in the shoulders of those outer roads. So we have to connect our system. A few years ago, we initiated, and as I mentioned, this is about to conclude, a study of the 40-mile section of I-70 in our region. This is a study. This is a segment that was not studied as part of the any of the cross-state 70 environmental work that was done, beginning in '99 with a feasibility study, 2001 Tier 1 environmental study, 2004 a Tier 2. And then in 2009, a truck-only lanes study. So we thought it very important that we set vision here. This corridor runs from ex-urban, suburban, urban, and densely urban, all of which are characteristically different. Nevertheless, it's important to set vision, identify priorities and strategies, which they too will make their way into the regional long-range plan upon the completion of this study. We're just moments away from completing this. This, I may suggest, has been our magnum opus thus far. This is the I-270 corridor across the northern tier, 15 miles of interstate, 16 interchanges, two-way outer roads, congestion, you saw the congestion in the previous slides, and severe crash issues. So it begged a solution looking into the future. What will this road function as in the year 2045? We took an innovative approach to the study. Our recommendations, which were approved by the Federal Highway Administration, calls for converting those outer roads to one-way. Make them a one-way system, making sure pedestrians can safely navigate along and across the interchanges, rebuilding the interchanges, making sure that the radii can accommodate modern-day larger trucks, which they currently struggle to do. And so, as I mentioned, we have the approval. It's called a finding of no significant impact from the Federal Highway Administration, which allows us then to move forward. So it is on the long-range plan. We made sure that it was. And in 2017, we applied for some Tiger funds to address the Lindbergh interchange, which is the major choke point on this corridor. Unfortunately, we didn't get it. Good news, though, is that we did receive, because of the innovative approach we took on this study, we wanted to be flexible. We didn't want to tie MoDOT's hands in a straitjacket in the traditional design bid build. We wanted to think about other methods of delivery, and you all approved design build for this corridor back in June, and we're grateful for that. The good news also is that it is on the STIP and the region's TIP, Transportation Improvement Program, in fiscals 19 and 20, some $225 million, not nearly enough, but we're grateful to begin the construction in that time period, and hopefully tie in nicely with the work that IDOT intends to do at the Chain of Rocks Bridge. So in summary, Commissioners, our process is very simple. Set vision, very important. Engage partners to come alongside and help fund our studies. I mentioned the I-70 Pell study that was in partnership, again, with East West Gateway, who provided money to match our funding of that study. Good effort. On the 270 project, we've had local partners, North County Inc., who have come alongside and really supported and made the case for MoDOT when we could not make the case ourselves for funding, and we're very grateful for that. So in summary, vision, making big plans, but realistic and flexible at the same time, goal setting, strategies, identifying solutions, engaging the community in those solutions, getting them on the long-range plan, that's the first step, and then in terms of implementing projects, getting them on the STIP and the TIP, and we've been very successful in doing that. Our studies are follow an aggressive path nationwide for environmental assessment. That's a 2.5-year effort, and we have been able to do those studies in significantly less time, saving monies, getting things done in time. So thank you for your time. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer those. If not, then I'll turn it back over to Ed.
Thank you, Wesley.
You're quite
Does
welcome.
anyone have any questions or comments for Ed or Wesley?
Well, I don't know who wants to answer. So we've got studies that are underway now that we're doing.
Yes.
We've also got several studies, if I remember, sitting on the shelf that have been completed and just waiting now for the project to come up and work on it. And then we got studies we're talking about we're going to do in the future. But knowing the limited budget that we have moving forward, how do you balance how many of these studies we participate in and get started?
Yeah, and I think that's an important question. A lot of people take the idea of planning and say that's what gets in the way of us getting stuff done. And I would tell you that that is not the case. What gets in the way of us getting stuff done is limited funding. When we know what the level funding or what we're going to be able to have in the future, it's never the planning study that gets in the way, because we can plan for that and we can make sure those things are done. It's the erratic funding or the lack of necessary funding to do these projects. So, you know, we've scaled back the amount of planning studies that we do.
We stopped doing some for a while.
Well, we stopped a few years ago. We're not stopped now.
Right.
But we're really careful to make sure that we're coordinating with the, you know, metropolitan planning organizations and the RPCs to make sure that we're reasonably far enough ahead. So like in the instance of major river bridges, those things have a long life, right? You got to start early. So our goal is always to have one of those in planning, one of those in design, and one of those in construction. Now, we're not quite there right now, but that's where we need to be. And for these big projects, when we have money, we should be kind of in the same place. So that's, you got to be careful. You can't spend, these don't come cheap. So any dollar you spend on these kind of things is money you're not spending on construction. So you got to have the right balance. And we're careful to do that.
I don't like the idea of spending money on all these studies and it sits on the shelf.
Yeah.
You know, we need to make sure we're doing things that we know we're going to be doing in the future.
And we're not really putting any on the shelf.
Yeah.
We're doing them, getting them done, doing the construction. And one of the things I wanted to do to kind of end this is, so we get to the point of a environmental assessment that we've got the FONSI on, the finding of no significant impact, then we move to construction. And so if you remember last month at your commission meeting, you approved the ability for us to use design build as the delivery method for the I-270 project. And as a part of that, authorized me to give the authority of the chief engineer to a project director. So we've done that, and I want to introduce to you our project director for the 270 project, Justin Wolf. Where is Justin? So Justin is going to be our project director to now deliver the actual construction project on 270. So thank you for that. Beginning to end. So we'll be back with a best value proposal for you on the 270 project in the near future.
Or next month.
Justin. Not quite next month.
Gotcha.
Director McKenna, any comments? Or?
Yeah, I think Commissioner Waters, your point is really well taken. I think we're all sensitive to the fact that we have active construction that needs to be done. We know where it is. But the notion, even, coming here a few years ago when the halt of regional studies, significant studies, think about what that's projecting for the future. That projects zero hope. Zero hope that we're going to solve these things. These are policy matters that need to be solved. Funding is a policy matter. Funding is a legislative construct. It's a policy matter. It has to be dealt with here in the state. It has to be dealt with at the federal level. There is no choice but to solve that, or we are telling our region, our kids, our future to go somewhere else. So projecting, and I think Wesley did a great job of talking about the vision. That vision is critical for economic development and for significance. We are reminded by our partners. I think we'll be reminded very shortly by one of our great partners in St. Charles County that halting those types of things is a constriction on the future growth for their community. And it's really unacceptable. We have to be careful. We have to be conservative in what we can do and to right size and design those things. But halting the process eliminates the notion. And keep in mind, we're in a competitive environment for federal dollars. As we laid out with our plans to bring August redistribution in, $83 million is coming to Missouri as a result of planning, as a result of being a little aggressive and saying we can get things done and we will go after those dollars. The only way we can do so is if we have things in the pipeline. And that's a critical facet as well. We spend some money to hopefully build the future.
Thank you, Patrick. Okay, our next item is a public presentation. Mr. Tom Blair is going to introduce our presenter. Tom?
All right, Commission, it is with great honor that I get to introduce Mr. Steve Ellman. Steve Ellman has for a long time been a county executive for St. Charles County. He's an East West Gateway board member, our municipal planning organization here in the St. Louis region. He is one of our valuable partners. In fact, he is probably one of our most valuable partners in St. Louis. He is one of our most persistent, right? He's one of our most passionate. He's one of our most visionary. The most passionate, persistent, and visionary St. Louis regional partners here in the St. Louis region. He is truly a man that is in the arena, according to people like President Theodore Roosevelt. So look that up if you haven't. Steve Ellman.
Yeah.
Thank you, Tom. Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission, Mr. Director. Thank you very much for the opportunity to be here today. And this is going to follow on very well with some of the things that have just been said with regard to planning and particularly with regard to freight. Okay? One observation, and my hat's off to the planners. They work hard. They do a lot and they're important to the process. But we all know that they don't have a crystal ball. And I would venture that 30 years ago, the planners didn't plan for St. Charles County to have nearly 400,000 people like it does today. When we finished Phase 3 of Page, before we ever started, the planners told us how many people would be using it in 10 years. We hit that number the very first year. Okay? So regardless of what the planners say, we live in a country where people can move and live wherever they want to live, and to a certain extent, we need to plan, but we also need to respond to those people. And if I can have the first slide here, that's what we've been doing in St. Charles County, and of course we could not do that for the last 60 years without MoDOT. Everything that we have in St. Charles County, we have because the people sitting in your seats for the last 60 years have made it happen. And sometimes they followed a plan, but more often what they did is they responded to people who chose to move there. And these pictures here are from 1958 when the first I-70 bridge opened up. And you can see there's the ceremony there, opening the bridge. I was 8 years old. I think Commissioner Brinkman was probably 6 years old. And we think we've found him. He's in the fifth row there from the left, but hardly recognizable. But ever since 1957, the county's been growing. And again, let me start off by just saying thank you. Next slide, please. This is a specific freight corridor. And it's not the only one, but it's the one that we're most concerned about in St. Charles. It's the I-70 corridor. And you can see that it goes all the way from Illinois out to Warren County. There's a lot that's going to be done on I-270. There's some things we want to see done on 70. But the biggest problem, and I think the one I want to make you aware of today, is that whatever we do in between, we have a problem on both ends. On the east end, going to Illinois, we already know the Chain of Rocks Bridge needs to be replaced, and IDOT is working on that, and that's going to be absolutely important for this truck route. But on the western end, we have a similar problem. We have 2 lanes of traffic to get out of the St. Louis region on I-70, and it's where you have to go under the railroad bridge at Wentzville. And if any of you are driving home, I would advise you to please leave before 2 o'clock this afternoon, because about 3 o'clock you're going to run into a lot of traffic heading home, Commissioner Briscoe. So, and the interesting thing about that is you can see the numbers better than I can there, but the Chain of Rocks Bridge was built in 1966, has about 58,000 cars today. It's on the Regional Long Range Plan. Out in Wentzville, that was built in 1951. And it has 82,000 cars per day, and it's not in the region's long-range plan, and that's not your fault. That's something we're going to be working on at East West Gateway. Next slide, please. This is, again, MoDOT has been very active on doing the planning on this, and this is from like 2009. This shows a new 4 lanes in each direction at the railroad track there. This is certainly something that we need, and we have done the planning. Okay, now we just need to make it happen. What's the next slide, please? MoDOT has purchased right-of-way back in the 90s and early 2000s to make that project happen, to eliminate this bottleneck, which is so important to freight on an east-west basis in the St. Louis region. Next slide. Shovel ready. Somebody said pipeline earlier. I forget what we used to call it. But the whole idea of getting projects ready to go, and for the last 12 years, somebody came up with this great term, shovel ready. That's what we've been trying to do for the last 30 years, is help you all get projects shovel ready so that when the money becomes available, we're ready to go. We don't have to start doing the planning. We don't have to start doing the design. But this bottleneck at Wentzville, we got the NEPA approved, concept plans approved, and the right-of-ways purchased. So I would simply suggest that we're ready, willing, and able, well, maybe not able, but ready and willing to get going if we could get the funding to do that. And I'll say more about that in a minute. Next slide. Now, this particular bottleneck, and it's interesting, the map that was up here earlier didn't even have this particular bottleneck on. And I know a lot of you are saying, well, you know, why am I here all of a sudden now? Where was I 4 years ago? Okay? And I will confess, we had some of the same things that were suggested earlier. We were not aware of the importance of freight. As we are today, and I got to give the people at East West Gateway and that whole freight district a lot of credit for that. So we start looking at this just last year, and I noticed at East West Gateway, they had the various congestion tables here, and I thought surely we were in Wentzville up near the top. Well, we weren't. But the way they had it done, they had I-64 up there number 4, and they had I-70 number 15, and they're both created by the same obstruction, which is that railroad track. So anyway, we got East West Gateway to go ahead and recalculate, and based upon that particular problem, we're number 2. We're number 2. Next slide. Again, why haven't we done NOR. Why wasn't I here 4 years ago? We took the position over the last 10 years or so that Wentzville, about 17% of the people in that traffic jam every day are actually St. Charles Countyans, okay? And we're interested in doing what we can to get them home at night from their commute. But this is 83% of these people are not from St. Charles County. This is a really an issue of statewide significance. This is regional significance. What we've been doing with our road board is trying to create ways for people who live in Wentzville to get home at night without having to go through that bottleneck. And you can see some of the roads that we've built already, others on the planning stage. But that's basically what we've been working on up until now. Next slide. We think that in addition to all the things that MoDOT looks at when they plan, one of the things they need to look at is the economic impact, okay? And as you can see here, our jobs increased by 6.29% last year. We're very lucky. We thank God every day for that. But that's not going to continue if we don't have the infrastructure that we need to continue that growth. Next slide, please. And you know, again, we have done a lot of these projects locally, and put in a great deal of our money. 5 of the 14 projects have been entirely by MoDOT, and 9 of the 14, 60% has either been local funds from the counties or the cities, or federal funds that the local entities have been able to bring to the project. Next slide, please. Again, why am I here? And I've already told you, economic development. These are just a few of the companies that have come to St. Charles in the last 5 years. The one area that we can really point to where we're growing is in this whole logistics. And I'm telling you, we've got trucks all over the place. And so far, it hasn't been a problem. They're coming. But what we can't let happen is 2 or 4 or 8 years from now, people want to bring their trucking to this part of the region. And they said, but I can't because I gotta, you know, it's gonna take me 40 minutes to get through that traffic jam every day in Wentzville. So we're just asking you to go ahead and be aware of that. Next slide. Again, we think it's a statewide significance. Obviously, there's gonna be regional money. There might even be some local money. Like I said, 17% of the people that use that are affected by that are actually St. Charles County citizens. But we think there needs to be some statewide WIMBY money as well, because it is of statewide significance, and you can kind of see the trend there. Other than the money that went for the Washington Bridge, the amount of WIMBY in the St. Louis area has declined significantly. Next slide, please. That's it. Now, in summation, this whole term shovel ready, okay? We want to do everything we can in St. Charles County to convince our folks that you all need more resources to work with. Right now, the one thing we have that is shovel ready would be the Wentzville. But we got the same problem in reverse now, okay? We're going to try to convince people in St. Charles County that we need these funds for economic development. But we'd also like to convince them that we need these funds so they can get home to their families quicker at night. So we think it would be great and of value and make our job a whole lot easier if we had a few more projects that were shovel ready, and we could actually tell people in St. Charles County, these things are shovel ready, we've been working on them, people are committed, we just need the funds. So I want to commit to you that I'm going to do everything I can to help get you what you need to do the job. And I just hope that you'll continue to remember St. Charles County and, again, appreciate how dependent all of us are on you. Thank you.
Thank
Have any
you,
questions?
Steve. Anybody have any questions or comments?
I'd just like to say, Senator Elman, it was great to visit with you last night and get caught up. And coming from the far reaches of the northwest corner of the state, I can still appreciate the freight situation, being involved in agriculture. I know that's very important. These studies are all very enlightening, and just want to thank you for being such a good partner and what you've done for St. Charles County, and we look forward to working with you in the future.
Thank you very much, and again, thanks for your time. And we did talk about the good old days. And your senator, who was a great advocate for transportation in the state back in those days, who now is in a position, possibly in Washington, D.C., to have a great deal of influence on the future of transportation. And by the way, my congratulations to the director on his promotion with AASHTO. You probably won't be seeing as much of him the next few years, but hopefully he'll be in Washington, D.C. Talking about transportation, how important it is to this part of the country especially. Thank you.
Patrick?
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, I just want to add and echo the comments about freight. I think that statewide freight plan has really been enlightening for the region and for the whole state. That has been a very directed focus of the Trump administration in the work that they're doing nationwide, and certainly the work that the House Transportation Committee with Congressman Graves and our entire congressional delegation is kind of focused on that. So the alignment and the recognition of the freight bottlenecks in our region, you know, we remove those freight bottlenecks and there's a secondary benefit for passenger travel. But that can really help focus and direct our resources in a way that does just what Steve was saying, which is to make sure that we're focusing on economic development. And freight is the perfect confluence of that, particularly in a state like Missouri. So a little bit premature. I haven't been ratified by AASHTO yet, but the MASTO forwarded my name last week as a potential for vice president of AASHTO for the coming year. So that's just depending. There are a lot of people trying to backtrack on that now that they realize, so we're trying to hold the vote until later in the month. So thanks.
You. Again, thank you, Steve, for being here today. We appreciate it. Okay, next item is a non-action item. Michelle Fourniers, did I pronounce it right? Area engineer will present the Poplar Street Bridge project. Michelle?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. We're going to talk about a facet of the Poplar Street Bridge work. This is just a piece of the widening, which we commonly call the slide. The process started on the Poplar Street Bridge in 2015 in the westbound direction. So this has been multiple years to get to this point. Most importantly, there's 3 reasons why we're working on the Poplar Street Bridge. Overall congestion to and from I-55, I-44, as well as safety concerns that is caused by that congestion. Also, the eastbound 64 direction frequently backs up majority of the day headed to Illinois. Safety and condition of the bridge has also been a problem. Most people say you've always been working on the Poplar Street Bridge. That's because the driving surface on there was a constant battle to keep that on there. We also had a truck tip over problem because of the narrow curves to and from 55, so they would frequently tip over. Let me back up. Most importantly, you need to recognize that this work is possible because we opened Stan Musial Veterans Memorial Bridge in 2014, relocating I-70 off of Poplar Street Bridge. So Poplar Street Bridge carried 3 interstates, I-70, I-64, and I-55. With the relocation of I-70, this work has been made possible. We needed that space of those previous I-70 ramps in order to make the connections with I-55, I-44. So this slide, there's 2 bridges separated very, very narrowly, just a few inches for the existing bridge. So we strengthened the cap, as you can see in the orange down below, and we widened 9 feet off the existing structure. That's what allowed us, we cut out the middle and widened just enough we're going to slide the bridge 9 feet and rest it on the new widened portion of the bridge. This is the most cost-effective way. This is utilizing the existing structure, which was built in 1967. Again, we've done most of this work while there have been lane closures or weekend closures of the bridge. We have done the majority of this work under traffic, keeping access for over 100,000 vehicles a day, maintaining a vital connection between Missouri and Illinois. The weekend of Easter, we actually shut down the eastbound direction. We have 6 piers. The total bridge that we moved was 2,165 feet long, 54 feet wide, and weighed 20.4 million pounds. We picked that bridge up just by a few inches. We raised it, and we slid it simultaneously across 6 piers, resting it the 9 feet to the south. They stayed within, they had a tolerance, they could not deviate, so we moved simultaneously in less than 6 inches off of each point throughout as it moved. This was a series of 26 jacks, push-pull units. They were set up on each of the column, or each of the piers, and it pushed and pulled that 20.4 million pounds all simultaneously. We've got a video of the slide. So actual movement of the bridge itself was just over a little over 2 hours. But there was a lot of preparation and returning to set it back down. So it was over a weekend, but actual movement of the bridge was just over 2 hours. So we do have a short clip here, and you will watch the bridge move towards me on your screen. Go ahead.
We're going to show all 2 hours.
No, we do have this sped up for you guys. So as you can see, it looked really simple in that video, right? This was constantly monitored and very carefully watched and checked. There were also stop blocks in place, so it couldn't slide too far. A lot of people asked that question about how's it going to stop. Since April, we've been working in the middle section where we widened, and we have set all the steel and we're tightening all the diaphragms now. All lanes will be open by the end of the year. The overall improvements will provide an added 5th lane from Missouri to Illinois, connecting the 6th Street on-ramp in Missouri to the Illinois Route 3 exit on the Illinois side. We've also added from single lane ramps to dual lane ramps to and from I-55 across the Poplar Street Bridge, which is a much needed improvement for miles of backups that occurred every day, many hours a day. The added improvement from connecting 6th Street to Route 3 is also alleviating several miles of backup on I-64 eastbound throughout the majority of the day in the afternoon periods from 2 to 6 p.m. This picture is just from about a week and a half ago. The steel is being set here right down the middle. We're working on that infill now. Any questions?
I think it's amazing. I just can't believe the engineering and the work that went into this, you know. And then yesterday when we drove across it and we're underneath and looking at it, I thought about all those contractor employees and the MoDOT employees that are out there working right along that traffic that's zipping back and forth, and to keep those people safe, and this whole thing is just amazing. I appreciate your work on it, Michelle. and the tour yesterday.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
How common is it to move a bridge like that?
Say that again?
How common, that seems pretty state of the art, so how common is it for that to happen?
So MoDOT has built bridges and slid them in place, like I-70 bridges in Columbia, much smaller single span structures. But to move a major river bridge, this is quite unique. And to utilize an existing major river bridge of this length and weight is unique to the United States. We are aware of a bridge that was built, the Milton-Madison Bridge, and then it was slid in place over a major river crossing. But this one is unique. We utilized the existing structure across 6 piers and slid it simultaneously. So quite an innovative approach in order for us to most cost effectively add a lane to this bridge, improve the condition and the safety of this bridge, and utilize it to get another 25 to 30 years out of the existing structure.
Who are the contractors?
The current contract, this is a series of contracts to the westbound direction. I'm drawing a blank who the westbound direction was. Keeley, and then the current contract is KCI.
It's amazing. Patrick, any comments?
Well, we know it's not the longest bridge that's ever been slid. It's the second longest, but it's definitely the longest bridge ever slid in this country on Easter weekend.
And it was not an April Fool's joke, too. It was also April 1st. So thank you.
Michelle. Thank you for your presentation. Yes, sir,
I
Ed.
just think it's important to point out that the solution to this problem was not apparent, and Missouri and Illinois worked on that for a long time, and it really was one of your former commissioners when he was the chairman at was the executive director at East West Gateway that came up with the idea to let's challenge folks to come up with a different solution. So Ed Hillhouse was kind of the mastermind that really pushed to get this solution done. And that wouldn't have happened without him doing that. So I just think that's something to be noteworthy of.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you for sharing that. Okay, the next item on the agenda is an action item. Eric Schroeder, State Design Engineer, will present bids for consideration. Morning, Eric.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, Director McKenna. I have the results of our August 17th bid opening. We received 58 bids on 14 calls. I recommend award all the calls to the lowest responsive bidder. And I have 2 other items to recommend for you. That the St. Louis Bridge Construction Company on call F01 and CDS Environmental Services, Inc. on call H01 ask that both of these be declared non-responsive as not following Section 102.8 of the standard specifications for highway construction and not providing a bid guarantee in their bid. These are my recommendations for you this morning. Are there any questions I can?
Any questions or comments for Eric?
I move we accept the recommendation.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. The bids are approved.
Thank you,
Eric, do
Mr.
have a
Chairman.
budget update?
I sure
for
do.
us?
So for fiscal year 2019, which we're just now moving into, this brings us to $93.1 million in awards, and we're 4.4% under budget. So that's a current savings of $4.2 million.
That's great.
And then our next letting for September 21st is 44 projects for roughly $58 million.
Okay.
It's nice to have these lettings each month like this.
Yeah, you'll see a steady increase as October and November we start letting a lot of projects for next year. And some of these that were awarded today will actually be completed next spring. So yeah, we'll see a steady increase coming here. That'll be good.
That's great. Thank you, Eric. Okay, our next item on the agenda is an action item. Brenda Morris, Financial Services Director, will present the appropriations request and supplemental appropriations request. Morning, Brenda.
Good morning, Chairman, Commissioners, Director McKenna. Today I'm seeking approval for 3 different appropriations requests. The fiscal year 2020 appropriations request, the capital improvement request for fiscal years 2020 and 2021, and the fiscal year 2019 supplemental appropriations request. My presentation is going to focus predominantly on that fiscal year 2020 request, which totals $3 billion and is $40.3 million less than the fiscal year 2019 truly agreed and finally passed budget, primarily because of a voluntary reduction of appropriation authority in the debt service appropriation, since we will not be calling bonds. I would like to provide a quick refresher on where we are in the process. Our current step is highlighted in red there, but the process for compiling this request started back in March. We received input from districts and divisions on items that needed to be included as part of the request. MoDOT is required by law to submit an appropriations request to the state budget director by October 1. The supplemental request is due at the same time, and Office of Administration has requested the capital improvements request be submitted by September 15th. These are the requests that we will follow through the legislative process. Once the legislature approves the appropriations and we are closer to the beginning of the fiscal year, we'll come back to the commission with a more refined budget for your approval. Given how dependent our expenditures are on variables like weather, having flexibility within our appropriations is important. Our request contains several items that help increase flexibility within our appropriations. First, estimated, or as it's sometimes called, e-appropriations, allow state agencies to increase the appropriation authority without going back to the General Assembly. The General Assembly eliminated all estimated appropriations from the state budget for fiscal years 2018 and 2019 for MoDOT as well as all other state agencies. With this request, we are once again requesting that E-designation on all state road fund appropriations, all personal service and fringe benefit appropriation from other funds, some of our transfer appropriations, and all refund appropriations. In addition, we are requesting flexibility language that would allow us to move 25% of the appropriation between personal service and expense and equipment appropriations within the same fund and appropriation type. For example, within administration, that would allow us to move 25% of the expense and equipment funds to personal services or vice versa. Many state agencies request, receive, and use this type of flexibility. Also, we are requesting the reallocation of the Fleet Facilities and Information Systems appropriation to the administration and maintenance appropriations. The main reason for this reallocation is to better align expenditures with the budget category the activity best relates. For example, fleet investment best relates to the maintenance activity. A byproduct of this change is additional flexibility. Pay continues to be a concern for all state employees, including MoDOT employees. This request includes $9.8 million of personal services and $5.7 million of fringe benefits for a total of $15.5 million to implement the first 3 years of the commission-approved pay strategy. That pay strategy would include a 1.1% cost of living adjustment, which the original plan had a 2% cost of living adjustment, and we've adjusted that for the pay plan that becomes effective January 1. A one-step pay increase for all eligible employees, and a one-step pay increase for all employees within steps 1 through 9 of their salary grade. In fiscal year 2018, MoDOT's overall turnover rate was 11.99%, an increase from 10.84% in fiscal year 2017. And that turnover comes at a cost. In fiscal year 2018, the hard and soft cost of turnover totaled $30.7 million, which is up from $28 million in fiscal year 2017. This pay increase would seek to mitigate salary compression issues and improve overall employee satisfaction and morale in relation to pay. The desired outcome from this pay increase would be higher employee retention and a reduction in costs associated with employee turnover. As Patrick has already mentioned, we have talked about our challenges with hiring maintenance workers in the past because the pay MoDOT offers is not competitive. This remains a challenge today. We are more concerned as winter is just around the corner and we anticipate being understaffed by approximately 350 to 400 employees. This understaffing will make it impossible to provide the same level of service our customers have come to expect and to ensure the safety of Missourians. In the last several years, we've relied on our safety-sensitive, non-maintenance employees to help, but this strategy has caused recruiting and retention problems in those functions as well. Without those safety-sensitive, non-maintenance employees, the staffing shortage number could rise to as high as 900 employees. This situation requires that we implement several new winter operation strategies, of which one is the Emergency Operations Stabilization and Market Adjustment. This adjustment will pay all full-time and seasonal employees and emergency equipment operators handling winter operation activities $3 or $6 per hour more during a winter event, depending upon the area of operation. The plan is to use this adjustment for other emergency operations such as flooding or storm response as well. This appropriation request includes $1 million of personal services and $1.7 million of fringe benefits for this market adjustment. In addition to our construction program, we have construction operating expenses that get paid from the Construction Expense and Equipment, or E&E, appropriation. The request this year includes a $5 million increase to the construction E&E appropriation. We have several items to be funded from this increase. For example, the Automatic Road Analyzer van, or the ARAN van, is used to collect road data such as rutting and grade information as it drives on roadways. We are required to gather this information on all national highway system routes. The total annual warranty and service fees for our 2 ARAN vans totals $100,000. We recently purchased new vans, and these costs for the first couple of years were included as part of the purchase price, but starting in fiscal year 2020, these fees will be paid annually. Another item to be funded is the new freight rail plan. The estimated cost is $1.25 million. The current rail plan expired in December 2017, and the current freight plan will expire in November 2022. We've received approval from the federal government to create a new state freight rail plan sooner, since we will be combining the two. The new plan will cover all modes of freight, will update passenger rail plans, outline the future of the rail sector here in Missouri, analyze research data on how to move goods efficiently through Missouri's infrastructure in order to support economic development resources and cover future needs. In addition, the increase to the construction E&E appropriation will fund several other operational needs, including additional grants that we've received and increases in driveway permit refunds. We've made a significant investment in our fleet. The current replacement cost is $450 million. However, the age and condition has fallen behind, and we've had no significant increase in the fleet budget for the last several years. A fleet team was formed to evaluate how we could improve the overall age and condition of our fleet. As part of their work, a consultant was hired to determine how long we should be keeping our fleet before disposing it, and what the fleet budget should be to keep the fleet in a better overall age and condition. The consultant determined that we should be investing between $32 and $50 million per year over the next decade. The fiscal year 2019 fleet budget at the start of the fiscal year totaled just $26.5 million. For fiscal year 2020, we are requesting $10 million of additional funding for the maintenance appropriation to increase our investment in fleet to begin to address this issue. This appropriation request includes a little over $12 million of additional general revenue for multimodal needs. The majority of the funding we receive for transit comes from federal sources. Part of this increase is for the State Transit Assistance Program, which will be used to defray operating costs for the 34 public transit providers across the state. For some in our state, having access to transit services is the difference between having a job and being unemployed. It's the difference between being able to seek medical treatment when needed versus having to wait until transportation is available. For our senior population, it allows them to age in place. For fiscal years 2018 and 2019, no general revenue was appropriated for this program, compared to $8.8 million in 2002. The State Transit Assistance Program also receives funding from the State Transportation Fund. Amtrak, also called the Missouri River Runner, is the twice-daily passenger rail service between St. Louis and Kansas City and also receives general revenue. This service provides an option to the traveling public for those who have chosen not to drive or who do not have driving as an option. We are requesting an increase to cover the amounts owed at the end of fiscal year 2018 and a shortage between the estimated contract amounts and the existing appropriations for fiscal years 2019 and 2020. This increase will allow the state of Missouri at the end of fiscal year 2020 to be current with its payments to Amtrak, which hasn't happened since fiscal year 2010. Ports are an important form of transportation to our state, and we now have 15 ports and 1 tri-state port commission in the state of Missouri. Ports are an economic generator and allows for the efficient movement of goods. For every barge filled at a port, this reduces the strain on congested roadways like I-70 and I-55 by 58 trucks. Our request includes monies for port capital improvement projects in both MoDOT's budget bill, which is House Bill 4, and the capital improvement House bills, which are biennial bills, and includes fundings for fiscal years 2020 and 2021. With that, we are asking for your approval today of the 3 appropriations requests as stated in your materials. Are there any questions?
Any questions or comments for Brenda?
Brenda, there's a lot of important stuff in there, but the one thing that I think in my mind rises to the top is you said, I think, $15.5 million over the next 3 years for the pay plan. And, you know, and then right after that, you said that the turnover in 2018 cost MoDOT $30.7 million just for turning over those folks. That's a lot of roadway could have been paved. So that's not even to mention that some of our folks are out there putting their lives on the line every day, and we're not fairly compensated. So getting this started, I think, is key to this whole organization from top to bottom. So thank you for that.
Yeah, we will continue the discussion with the legislature on this very important topic.
Director McKenna, do you have comments?
I think Tom said it well. It is. You know, it's not costing MoDOT. It's costing the citizens of Missouri, and that's really the point here. This is we don't bring forward proposals that our financial plan don't accommodate, but we see great return on that investment, that critical investment, and we think it's a pure waste of money to have this level of turnover where we're not competitive at the market. And it's just, you know, it costs half to solve really most of the problem. Our turnover should be 5 to 6%. That's a normal retirement and people moving for other things. We're double that right now. And it's costing Missourians. It's costing us dedicated, skilled, trained people. And the work that we do requires that. You can see from the complications of all the project work that's going on, the maintenance activities that we do. It's complicated, dangerous work. It needs to be done safely, needs to be equipped properly, and people need to be compensated reasonably with not to gain riches, but to put food on the table for their families.
That's right.
I move we approve Bradley's recommendation.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Brenda, thank you very much. Okay, this brings us to our public comment period, and the first one today is Mark Tranel, North County Incorporated.
Thank you,
Morning,
Mr.
Mark.
Chairman, members of the Commission. I am here today representing North County Incorporated. Actually, my comments will focus on some of the items that were earlier on your agenda. In his comments, in his report, Director McKenna mentioned advocacy for Proposition D. North County Incorporated has been and will continue to be very aggressive in informing the 350,000 residents and 9,000 businesses in North County. North County, the area we serve, is everything in St. Louis County north of Page Avenue. We have been working so far and will continue hopefully to see on the ballot and have the opportunity to support the additional transportation dollars. So that is something that is very high on our agenda of activities for the coming months. Secondly, in his report, Wesley Stephen mentioned the I-270 corridor project. We are very grateful to the cooperation that we've received from the staff of the department, from the commissioners in getting the planning done for this project and for the opportunity to get the project started. Obviously, all the comments that you heard about the importance of freight, economic development, other activities in the St. Louis area, the I-270 North corridor, and it's an important component of that. We appreciate the work that we've been able to do to support that project. Hope that the implementation goes quickly and well, and of course your support in the future for completing all of the work on that project would be critical. So first of all, we're continuing to work on your behalf for transportation dollars, but we are very grateful for all the cooperation we've gotten from the staff and the commissioners on the 270 North Corridor project. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mark. Appreciate your comments. Next is Mick Fisher, Fire Chief, Cedar Hill Fire District. Good morning, Mick.
Good morning, gentlemen. Thank you for the opportunity to speak in front of you. Just so you know, I'm Mick Fisher. I'm the Fire Chief, Cedar Hill. We're in the northwestern part of Jefferson County. My fire district is sort of bisected by Highway 30 and some of the other highways that run off is Highway NN, BB, Highway B, Highway Y. The reason I come to you today is to voice some concern about Highway NN. It was recently resurfaced, and we had hoped that we were going to see some reduction in accidents due to that resurfacing. And what's been sort of alarming to us is in the past 3 months, since it's sort of been completed, is that we're actually seeing an increase in accidents. I've voiced these concerns to Judy Wagner, who's our area engineer, and also to Jim Terry, who's one of our county commissioners. Jim's the one that put me up to come up here to speak today. He's been pretty instrumental in advocating for roadway safety in our area, and he told me that he thought it'd be a good idea for me to come speak to you today. So if you're not familiar with Highway NN, it's a very hilly, curvy highway that runs from Highway 30 in Cedar Hill to Highway O in Pacific. It has a higher rate of accidents. We have an 82 square mile fire district, and currently Highway NN has the highest rate of accidents of any other Missouri highway in our fire district. Like I said, it was recently resurfaced, and what's particularly alarming about the accidents we're seeing is that they are all single vehicle accidents where the driver of the vehicle has dropped a wheel off the shoulder of the road or lack of shoulder on the road and lost control, and those accidents have been pretty severe with pretty significant injuries. Typically when we look at the accidents in our district, you know, they're spread throughout. There's different reasons for these accidents. So like I said, the alarming part is the fact that all of these accidents have been single vehicle accidents that the driver has lost control because of taking that vehicle off the roadway. We compare that to the project that was done on Highway B several years ago. On Highway B, they added some smaller shoulders and guardrails, and to be quite honest, we thought the guardrails were going to create more accidents for us, and to our surprise, it hasn't. We've seen a dramatic decrease in accidents on Highway B, and what we would like to see, and kind of the reason that I'm here speaking today, is to maybe put this on your radar for the future, that we could see similar improvements done on Highway NN. In the future, you know, I understand that it takes a while to get funding, and we by no means are expecting to see immediate action on this, but we would like to at least get it on the radar for future improvements. We also would like to see maybe some more immediate action just taken on. We've identified there's about a 2-mile section of Highway NN where most of these accidents have taken place, and that's even a greater concern of ours. And our hope is that maybe if we could get some better shoulders or some guardrails in that section of the highway in the near future, that we can prevent these accidents from happening. Because like I said, they have been pretty severe. And if you're not aware, one of them did involve a MoDOT dump truck, and the driver of that dump truck was very lucky. But also along with that, the crews from MoDOT need to be commended, because when we got there, they had traffic controlled, they had everybody cleared out, and we were able to get in there and get right to action. So we commend MoDOT on their actions that day to help that driver of that vehicle to not have injuries worse than she could have, and allow us to get in and take care of that. So again, I want to thank you guys for letting me come and speak and hearing me. We hope to see some future improvements, and I'm going to continue. My plan is to continue feeding information to Jim and Judy with the statistics as far as it's concerned with our accident rates, and hopefully in the future we can see some better safety improvements put in place. Thank you.
Thank you.
That was in Jefferson County?
Highway NN in Jefferson County, yes, sir.
Thank you, man. Our next comment is from Thomas Schneider, who is the mayor of the city of Florissant. Good morning, Mayor.
Good morning, and thanks for this opportunity. Just before I start, I'm going to echo the comments by Mark Tranel of North County Inc. in regards to Highway 270. It's very essential for the future progress of Florissant and North County. But I was also a member of the 21st Century Missouri Transportation Task Force, and it was a bipartisan board, and we essentially recommended what has become Prop D, which is before the voters in November. We're just so pleased that Governor Parson is behind this, as well as a host of stakeholder organizations throughout Missouri. It's kind of become lately a hobby of mine, trying to collect endorsements for Prop D, and I'm glad to report that I anticipate we'll have it from the St. Louis, the Engineers Club of St. Louis, and the Greater North County Chamber of Commerce, in addition to North County Incorporated and some others that I've approached, and plus I'm glad that we're seeing support for it from the rural areas of Missouri, and it looks like this thing is really gaining speed. But I want to compliment Director McKenna and Engineer Hassinger. They were with us the whole time. They were very matter of fact in the way they delivered the message of the mission of MoDOT, and I'm convinced that MoDOT is one of the best highway departments in the country. They do more with less, and I think that fact that they have accomplished that, and then you guys, with your assistance as directors, is going to go a long way for convincing the voters of Missouri to do the right thing in November. So I just want to compliment you for the great job that you've done with the assets that we've provided to you, and I know you'll continue to do that, and with additional funding, I think it'll put Missouri in a position for great progress for decades to come. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for nice comments. Okay, that is all. At the end of each meeting, we like to provide each commissioner a few minutes to express any concerns or comments they may have coming before the commission. So, Commissioner Brinkman, since we're here at home.
Wow, this is a great meeting. I'd like to thank Leslie for his wonderful presentation on planning. I think you're the unsung heroes of us. I remember being in 5th grade, and my teacher said they're going to build a highway around the city, and I thought, well, that's cool. And in 12th grade, freshman year of college, I was the first to drive down 270 to go to Rolla. And I'm thinking, who the heck's going to live out here? Why did they put 4 lanes of concrete out here? And we just don't realize, and this, to show how old you're getting, now they're going to rework that system up in North County where I grew up, Shamrocks Park up there. So I appreciate everything you and the professionals that you guys have in your department are doing. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Ecker.
I want to thank Tom for the hospitality and the tour stay, but we all know that Michelle, Justin, and Bethany did the heavy lifting on that. So that was a great tour yesterday, and what was done at the Arch and the Poplar Street Bridge is just amazing. The last time I tried to go to the Arch it was under construction, and now to see the final results is just phenomenal of how that turned out. And as I mentioned earlier, I just am amazed at how they could move that bridge. The other thing is I'd like to congratulate Patrick and everybody at MoDOT for all the awards that we're winning and the great job everyone's doing. I'm new on the commission, and I'm still every meeting amazed by how great a staff we have and how hard they work and what a good job they do. And it's also encouraging to hear all the positive comments we've received this meeting about Proposition D. It gives us a lot of encouragement, and I think that we heard just now that task force was an integral part in hopefully making that be successful. So, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Briscoe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I also want to thank everybody for the tour yesterday. That was, I really enjoyed that. I thought it was very enlightening to me anyway. And the bridge, Terry mentioned the Poplar Street Bridge, and I'm still impressed with that. And speaking of bridges, here's one that nobody has mentioned. Saturday I drove across the Champ Clark Bridge, the old Champ Clark Bridge, and you'll be glad to know that the new one seems to be progressing real well, and I'm proud of that. That's up in our neck of the woods. And also I want to congratulate Patrick and all of the MoDOT people for the awards, and Patrick particularly on the Masto and the Ashto recognition. And then the NGA project is another thing that's just overwhelming to me, and I think it's wonderful that that's going to come into being, and it's terrific. And so I think it's been a good meeting. I've enjoyed it and appreciate everybody, all of the ODOT folks that are here that have been a part of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Briscoe. Commissioner Waters.
Well, I think we've all thanked him privately, but I wanted to publicly thank Bob and Kim for dinner last night. He hosted us at his home last night for dinner, and it was great. So, Bob, thank you for that. I also want to again recognize the folks from Jeff City and Mayor Teagan and the port that's going in there. I'm looking forward to seeing that take flight and watch the development there. I think that's going to be a great thing for not only Jeff City but Central Missouri as well. Just briefly, I know the tours have been mentioned. I think it's one of the great things that we've gotten more into. Each meeting, we're trying to take time to go out and see projects in the districts, and yesterday's tour was I think one of the best, if not the best. But when Patrick held up those awards and started talking about them, I'd been to both of those places, so I knew exactly what he talked about. So I think that's the importance of those tours, and I encourage us to keep that up. And I know the chairman wants me to be brief. He's heavy cyano here, so I will be. But I just wanted to repeat the quote in Wesley's presentation that I thought was interesting. He said, make no little plans, because they have no magic that stirs man's blood. And so I'm looking forward to continue to stir blood in man's mind. Thank you all.
Thank you, Commissioner Waters. Vice Chairman
How
Pace.
do you follow that?
Yeah, it's tough to go last.
Stirring blood. I had 8 bullets, and 7 of them have been taken up already, so I won't repeat them. I did want to say, Bob, to you and Kim, thank you for a wonderful evening. Also, thanks for the reception that the Chamber hosted last evening. It was very nice. Patrick touched on it somewhat about the significance, number one, of the PGA tourney for this region. But when you look at the work behind the scenes for something like that, it's tremendous. And the planning process that goes into an event that large, kudos to not only Tom and all of his folks, but also to law enforcement that is here. Thank you guys very much for what you did to make that a success. We're really thankful for that. Patrick, you continue to make us proud. AASHTO, MASTO, whatever, all those O's, you know. You're doing a great job out there. I don't like the comment that I heard earlier that we're going to be seeing less and less of you. So we want you to remain visible now. I don't know if Otis is still here, but I really appreciated his presentation on the NGA. That was, I said it earlier, I'll say it again, what a wonderful project and what a wonderful area to do that in. Yeah. It really, really helps that area down there. So thank you for that. Wesley, I too enjoyed your great presentation. Brenda, we hear you. Pay raises, absolutely, we hear you guys. We're just going to beat that drum every chance we get to the General Assembly, because they must understand, they must realize what it's doing to us. And 11.9% turnover rate, that's statewide. Tom, I don't know if you know offhand, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I'll bet you yours is more like 30. Yeah. Kansas City and St. Louis, yeah, probably 30% turnover rate. I mean, that's unacceptable, unacceptable. So we'll continue to beat that drum, and again, safety, safety, safety. Tom, preach it. You're in charge of it up here. Make sure that it happens. You've got so many opportunities daily for a cataclysmic affair, and we do not want that to happen. I mean, just separated by inches in these work zones. It's just incredible the risk that our people take for menial salaries. So continue to monitor the safety and continue to provide accolades to your people. They're doing yeoman's work in a less than desirable situation. So thanks everybody for what you do.
Thank you, Commissioner Pace. Well, I'm not going to repeat everything that everybody said, but I did publicly want to thank Commissioner Brinkman and his bride for hosting us last night. It was very, very enjoyable. When am I invited back? Okay. And again, congratulations, Patrick, for everything. And Tom Blair and your staff, thank you for hosting us for the meeting. It's been a good one. Thank the law enforcement for being here. So before we adjourn, I want to note that our next meeting is scheduled for October 3rd, 2018 in the beautiful city of Clinton, Missouri. Clinton, Missouri. It's like a former president. Anyway, so I hope to see you all there.
You just lost your crowd there.
I hope to see you all there. So I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
Motion is second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We are adjourned.